So moving right along, I'm going to introduce the next speaker, who is Keith Mousel. He's the Center Manager of the Withlacoochee Forestry Center and Withlacoochee State Forest, encompassing 160,000 acres and located in Citrus, Hernando, Pasco, Lake, and Sumter counties. He's been a drone pilot since 2019 and with the Florida Forest Service for 33 years. Keith is a Type 1 Incident Commander for the Florida Gold Team. And I know we're all really excited to hear this topic. This was one of the topics that came up in through last year's evaluation. So thanks so much, Keith, for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Zach, for that first presentation. I think they put the two old guys first on this. As Samantha said, I've got 33 years in with the Florida Forest Service, and a lot of it in fire, prescribed burning, on the Withlacoochee State Forest throughout the state, throughout the United States. So the Withlacoochee State Forest was lucky enough to be the pilot program for the drone program that the state of Florida got. And we will go through that, and hopefully we'll have some questions at the end. You know, with the drone program, it's you're looking at how can you, what are the different things that you want to choose about: acreage amount, fuel types, topography, available resources. And one of the good things with the Withlacoochee State Forest is we manage land from the Gulf of Mexico kind of down to the doorsteps of Disney World. And it encompasses both the swamplands, the longleaf pine, wiregrass community, the Central Florida flatwoods. And we have utilized that drone program in all of those inside. We started out small and are working it up to different sizes. And it is a nice tool to have in the box because it's can range from not having to put up a helicopter maybe on some smaller burns and helping minimize some of the risk out there. So what we utilize is the drone DJI Matrice 600 Pro. The payload system originally was the Ignis 1.0. Within the last 8 months, we've been able to go to Ignis 2.0. We have a ZenMoose XT2 thermal camera, and you'll see some photos of that later on that show you what you get to see from the air. And it really gives you a bird's eye view of what's going on in the burn, keeping folks out of the block, keeping folks safe. It really makes a big difference. So we started this in the first drone came to the Florida Forest Service. They got it in 2019. They said it was going to come to the Withlacoochee State Forest, Withlacoochee Forestry Center. So in March of 2019, we set up a kind of a working group. We set out our marching orders to try to get drone pilots on board. So by March 27th, roughly 30 days after we were told we were getting the drone, we had gone through the training, we had gone through the testing, and we had 4 pilots certified for USA 107 operation. Eventually we got MAT 7. We call our drones MAT 6 and MAT 7 for tracking purposes. So we got a second one delivered in November of 2019. And we all culminated this together in April when Ignis Drone Amplified came down, gave us a test flight of the drone, and they were pretty impressed that our operators already were familiar with drone operations and they didn't have to do everything. They were able to sit back, watch us handle it, put the aircraft up, and give us the nuts and bolts, but let us handle it. And at the very end, we'll show a video of that day. So again, as I said, we've got 2 UAS systems here at the center. We've actually got a third one in the state that's still up in Tallahassee. They're trying to figure out where they want it to go, but due to legislative changes, they're a little leery on putting it out. And those legislative changes are that they passed a law this last year that gives anyone flying Chinese drones or non-US manufactured drones that by 2023, you've got to change them over to a American made drone platform. Now with the Matrice 600, DJI has discontinued that product. So Drone Amplified is having to work through that and come up with something. So hopefully in the next couple of years, we'll get that figured out and be able to put the Ignis system on a new platform and keep moving forward. But on the screen, you can see that we have, again, 6 pilots now that are UAS sanctioned 107 certified. And all of them have recently gone through their new recertification. Every 2 years, the pilots have to recertify, and they have gone through those recertifications. And we've been able to get some new, not new certificate, but new things that we can do with it. At first, we could not fly at night without a permit or a COLA or something that we had to get through FAA. With the new recertifications, we can now fly at night. Now, the drones are not quite equipped yet to fly at night, and we are working on that. So I hope this coming winter, we'll actually be able to put a drone up and conduct a nighttime burn operation with a drone and see how that goes. But we've currently done 65 flights with 50 flight hours, have completed 33 different prescribed burns for a total of 29 flight hours. We have put out 12,251 spheres and burned 12,517 acres. So we're putting out just a little less than 1 sphere per acre. What are some of the issues that you got to deal with? They're going to be technology, and just like any other technology out there, whether it be your smartphones and the apps you keep on it, you got to stay up with the new updates. And sometimes the new updates will come with those bugs, and then the new update comes up to fix those bug issues. So you just don't want to take your drone and put it in a box and pull it out we try to have our drone operators looking at our drone pilots, looking at the drone and trying to fly it at least once a week, if not once every other week, and make sure the app and software is all up to speed and going to it. That still won't eliminate your problems that you may come up with. There will be issues that come up with, and we'll talk about that in a little bit longer. We've learned through the process that the batteries that we use, that you periodically got to run them completely to empty and get them into a deep charging cycle so that they don't gain a memory and never fully recharge. Because I want to say it's 6 batteries in this drone system, and if one of them is a little bit off compared to all the other ones, it will give you errors and everything else, and then you got to try to figure out which one's the weak one and get them changed out. And we've got enough batteries and enough equipment on scene that we could fly a drone all day with batteries, and you're getting about 30 to 40 minutes per battery on each flight. So what are some of the other issues that we're looking over? Is that reliable distance from the controller. In Florida, we're flat ground. We've got the vegetation that's going to block everything. We are trying, and on a given day, we can sometimes get it, but we are trying to get about 7,000 feet out. That would give us coverage over a full 640 acre section. which in Withlacoochee, that is in our sand hills. Those are a lot of our burn blocks from time to time. We're not quite getting that because atmospheric changes can drop that off. The going through line of sight and through the vegetation will block that. So we are trying to work on different software technology that will get us some of that. And even to the point that the folks are moving their landing zone from time to time to get the coverage they need. At one point, we needed a line of sight and night flight hours. Again, with the new updates in the recertification, we have been able to get certified in night flight. Line of sight is still an issue. So basically everybody that is on the prescribed burn gets briefed on the drone and they become the visual observers as they're working around the units to follow that drone and stay within the line of sight of somebody on the burn. If you see that photo in the lower left, that is a photo of an aerospace pilots aeronautical chart, and the overlay is the Withlacoochee State Forest, and you can see through some of them circles that we fall into the different airspaces, and you have to be aware of the airspace. If you get into different classifications of airspace, you actually need permission from the towers to be able to fly. Let them know. You need to be looking for if there's some special warnings out there. The nice part about it is because we have a pilot in our district, he understands all that. He's been able to teach our pilots to make those calls as needed and go to it. We flew up in the Jacksonville district and they had some of the same type issues. We've got to look at those aeronautical charts and make sure we're not impeding on them. And we're going to make sure that we all follow all state of Florida laws and policies set by the Florida Forest Service. So Ignis is, from the very beginning to now, has changed quite a bit over time. This would be the programming of the mission. You can preload PDF files, KMZ files. They can come, you can download aerials onto the system. It's what you want to make it the easiest for programming it. And that's what we'll go through here. So it will tell you got the 2 fill sites and you got to fill and inject them and agitate the balls and then the start and stop. We like to use geo-reference PDF maps that we load into the system. They can be loaded in advance or the day of. Again, they can be PDFs, they can be KMZs overlaid, or just even aerials. You can do what you need to do just on the aerial. Just kind of setting up the burn unit, the 145, that's the acreage of our burn units. You can see the overlay of the lines. They've set up the geo fence to keep the drone in. That means that the drone will not drop past that geo fence. It may fly by it, but you want to make sure you keep that geo fence inside your perimeter somewhat, because you can't guarantee there won't be a ball in the hopper just as it's hitting your fence and maybe drop it outside the line. And if you keep it a set distance inside your burn perimeter, that ball should stay within your perimeter and not go outside the perimeter. You can set up the transects for it. The lines that you see here, they're the zigzag headings. So yellow is going to be the dropping pattern. Blue is a non-dropping pattern to the next segment and going through. You set that up however you wanted. When we first started with setting up the maps, it was not quite as intuitive, and working with Drone Amplified and giving them feedback, they were able to change it. We actually laid a 2x2 chain grid over the burn units so that when they set the reference, the geo reference fence up, that they would not be outside it. I know on one of our first burn attempts, we did it without a grid, and we stayed 450 feet off of the burn perimeter because it's hard to adjust on the tablet. And it got a little bit warm, and then we were able to adjust it, went to the grid, drone amplified, got our feedback, and they started making changes. So you set the grid up and you're going to work from north to south on this. Just keep working back. And you can do this all ahead of time. You don't have to do it the day of. You can set it up beforehand and make it work. So once you get the programming mission in, it'll tell you how long they expect the flight time to be. 17 minutes on that programming. 325 spheres are going to be done. You're going to drop them every 102 feet. You're going to be at a flight level of 390 feet. Remember, with a drone, you can only fly 400 feet above ground level, unless you're going to go up and look at a communications tower, then you can be above it. But on general, it's 400 feet above ground level is what you're at. The average cruise speed is 25.1 miles an hour. And again, drop spacing 102 feet. So it says it will drop one every 7 seconds at its slowest rate, and you can increase that. This is a side view looking at your elevations from it. So at the treetop level where you're at. One of the things we found out real quickly on our Matrice 600 is that our Matrice does not have a proximity alert. So working with Ignis on the drone amplified on the very first flight, they told us it did not have a proximity alert, so we had to readjust. We were thinking you could go, all right, launch, go to point number 1. Well, if you're in a stand of trees, point number 1 is going to put it right through the stand of trees. So we have to launch it straight up to point number 1, to the elevation, to the altitude we want to fly it at, and then it moves out across the top to its first flight line. Otherwise, we'd have been picking up parts from the get-go. So hopefully newer drones will come with proximity alerts, but the Matrice 600 did not. The nice thing about the programming is you can see it will put a point where it's dropping every ball in there. Again, down in the lower right-hand corner is our thermal infrared camera. So we can pull up the regular view and see a thermal in the bottom. This is looking down at the mat. Looks like it's sitting on the helicopter landing mat before takeoff. So it just shows you the whole thing. Will show you where it's at, the direction of travel, all that good stuff. Again, the thermal's in there. So this is a good photo of the cameras. Again, when the camera is activated and you're looking at it, you get to see the entire picture. So this is a wetland in Croom. This was a recently done burn. In the lower left-hand corner, you can see the fire went down and around the wet portion of the deepest part of that wetland. And on the right is the thermal image of that. In the upper corner, it's the fire lines that were set. And then to the right, you can kind of see the fire line itself through the camera. So you get both of them, and you can make each one become the primary. Usually the regular camera is the primary, and then the thermals a smaller imagery in the bottom. Just some more footage of burns. So it will pick up even in the day, it will pick up personnel and their heat signatures. So you can actually see them in the smoke where they're at. So it can help with a safety part of it. It will point out if you got something maybe across the line that you might not be able to see because of smoke. It is a good tool to utilize. You just don't have to wait till dark to do it. Showing the spot firing technique happening. Again, just some of the stuff that we can pull up from the programming in the drone amplified, the Ignis, you know, is so they did a burn on August 13, 18 minutes. It flew, 88 spheres put out. And these are going to be, every time it goes up and comes down, it's going to reset once you turn off the drone and change out batteries. So you get a new flight every time. And you really need to be documenting that. That is part of the requirements of the 107 is that you maintain flight logs. If FAA comes around, they can ask you for your flight logs, and you better have them in there. So on the 13th, they conducted 4 different flights that day, and you can see the different number of spheres and the flight time in there. So if you really dig into the records that's put out by Ignis, this is the flight record that you can get, and you can take this information, drop it into GIS, and get it visualized, and each flight can be a different color out there for the day. And Arc Pro will support a 3D visualization of this. So with ArcGIS improving everything, you're getting even potentially more benefit from it. So what do you need? You're going to need an enclosed trailer to carry everything. Doesn't have to be a massive one. Just got to carry everything you have, probably a 4x4 truck to get in to where you're going. We've got a Honda generator that we can set up, and we'll run all the recharging batteries for it. We got extra batteries both for the Ignis, the dropper, and the drone itself. And they can come in and get recharged, and we can run all day. To help with looking at the tablet, you know, glare can be an issue. So a tent for shade, and even just setting up the drone in the beginning is good. Once you get it back to wherever you're going to store it, some form of climate controlled storage is good, and a laptop computer so that you can update the software, the apps, and everything else on the drone and the tablets that you have. Again, so to be on site, anybody can operate the controls, but you got to have a pilot in charge. That pilot in charge has to have the 107 license. Line of sight is our requirements by FAA again, so everybody on the burn is briefed on the drone, and they become the visual observers for the burn that day. Yeah, flight logs are the big thing. We started out originally with a paper flight log. All righty. And got through that. So what we've gone to with our folks that are GIS savvy, they have actually gone to a Survey 123 record keeping, and that keeps it going fairly quick, and they can go through everything and make sure it does the pre-check flights, then who's flying on the flight record. And that's all surveyed. And when it's brought back in, it's downloaded into GIS. Here is where we have actually flown so far in the state of Florida, up in Jacksonville, over in Orlando, down in Lakeland, mostly around us, up in Tallahassee district. We get some different stuff here. This is just a chart of what you can do in grading each flight. The poor are 2 times where we had mechanical failures, one during the operation, and the second one was after they had got to a flight and we had a motor on the injector go bad, which was creating an automatic drop. These can all be sent, are all sent to Ignis, and they can look at it and go over it. So what we're looking for is the overall safety. It's going to reduce exposure of people in the burn block, gets fire into otherwise an inaccessible area where people can't get. It can reduce personnel fatigue. It can assist with recon, look for spot fires, monitor fire behavior, and you can do more controlled firing technique and spacing. We have started going to actually flanking fires with the drone quite a bit. So just running out of time here, so want to run this video real quick and then I'll be done. This video was the very first flight of the drone. We were learning how to use it with Ignis on hand. So their drone is above it, taking over. Nope. Sorry about that. That was so that was the very first drone. That's where we learned. Very, very good opportunity. It was one of our cattle areas, wide open, able to launch it, see what it was doing. Just a good opportunity to put it. So we ended up burning about 17 acres of pasture that day. But it is a benefit, like I said. In 2 years, we've used it on 12,000 acres. I think that's fantastic, and we hope to continue to use it. We've got the opportunity to now start putting, we actually did put it on a wildfire out on the coastline to map a fire line in 2020. And it's just an invaluable tool that's getting more and more beneficial every day. And that's what I got. Any questions?
Yeah, Keith, actually, we do have quite a few questions. Once again, this is Ben, the Secretary of the Council. So starting with our highest voted question, James Shute asked, is the drone operator choosing where to drop the fire, or is someone who knows fire telling them? or maybe the burn boss?
So the way we work it is there is still a burn boss that works out the details of setting that flight lines up with the pilot. The pilot is not the burn boss and the pilot in charge. So you really got both. So they're going to set up that firing pattern. And the nice part about it is you can tell that the pilot in charge to stop firing, hover in place, and they can manipulate it if you see things going, not doing what you want it to do. You don't have to, like a helicopter, maybe set it down or keep it flying. This, you can just hover it in place and keep it going.
Okay, the next question is from Scott Matthews. Do you have the ability to assist other state agencies with your drones? Because they would love to get you out of Crystal River.
We have not gone to other agencies. We are working that way because we have had requests from the local FWC folks that have land in our area, and we have not put it on any private lands due to the privacy concerns and everything else. But we're slowly working it that way. I'm hoping that come the spring we'll have those issues worked out. But with the changes in laws and everything, things are changing fairly quick.
Okay, and actually, I'm going to jump ahead of the voting to kind of give you a follow-up. Are there any contract companies that are using drones? So maybe if you're not available, maybe they could contract someone else.
I don't know of any contractors that are using this right now.
Okay. All right, so the next voted question, somehow I jumped to the bottom, is can you state how many spheres the drone can hold at once? Like what's the payload and how many acres that can cover before you have to land and refill?
Well, again, Ignis 1.0 was 150 to 175. That was the original aerial incendiary device sphere, the bigger one. Ignis 2.0 has gone to the Dragon Egg, so it can tote 450 spheres in it. And if you're putting less than one per acre, you're 450 acres. Now, you may not have all the time on the battery to get that many out before you got to change batteries out, but it'll hold 450 spheres.
All righty, thank you. And what is the cost of the drone?
Because of the camera, probably close to 50,000, I think it was total for everything with the drone, the Ignis device, and then the high-tech camera on it.
Okay. Wow. So it's definitely an expensive piece of gear.
Yeah.
Next question is, what kind of safety buffer is built into the drop grid since GPS locations are notoriously inaccurate?
Well, the nice thing about the Matrice 600 is it's actually working off of 3 GPS units. It is pretty darn accurate.
And didn't you say it was about 450 feet, or at least in the one picture you showed?
What was that?
The buffer. I thought you had said in one of those.
Well, at one of them, when we first started, because we were so new at it, we set up the geo fence to keep it from dropping on, and they just kind of looked at it on a small screen, and they got it way inside the boundary line, or inside the fire line.
Mm-hmm.
It was holding it, so that's why we went to a 2x2, 2 chain by 2 chain grid, and then you could easily say, okay, I'm now in 60 feet off the boundary. That's where I want my geo fence. But Ignis's improvements over their mapping and stuff has gotten better. So my guys have even gone away from that 2 chain by 2 chain grid.
Okay. Next question is, the sears and machines sometimes get gunked and clogged up. Is there an emergency release for the Ignis unit if this occurs?
There is. The bottom, it's a 2-part series. So one part hooks onto the drone, and then that's what the hopper is. And then the bottom piece hooks into the hopper, and it's got a heat sensor in it. And if it detects a hung ball that ignites, it will automatically eject it, or you can see it on your screen that the temperature is going up and you can automatically eject it. If you hook the tethers up, it drops about a foot below the hopper and you can bring it back in. If you don't hook the tethers up, it's going to be laying in the woods somewhere.
And that's probably
and that's what our issue was in when we went to Lake Wales, and we didn't realize it. They had messed with it a couple of days before everything was working, got down to Lake Wales, and one of the motors in the injectors had short circuited. And the minute they would hook it up to the hopper, it would automatically eject it because the computer read it as a hung sphere.
Okay. Next question is, why 390 feet of altitude for the drone operation? Is there any problem with wind drift or balls at this altitude as opposed to lower altitude?
We just found it to be a better for the mix. When we first started, we were having the nice part about the drone versus the helicopter, we could hear what was somewhat going on, and we had either we were over glycoling the balls and we'd actually hear them popping, some above the ground, some while on the ground, so they weren't igniting. We finally got the mixture worked out pretty good with the dragon eggs. It's a 0.1 to 0.2 milliliter mixture. But with at 390 feet, we seem to get our greatest distance from the controller.
Okay. And also you can't go above that because of the drone regulation. So that's
right.
You're pretty much at your ceiling.
Right, 400 foot's your ceiling.
Okay. If we have certified pilots, is there an opportunity for them to come out and one of your burns to see it in action and train with your pilots? This is Maria Zondervan from St. John's.
We do. We want folks to come out, and if we go to another Florida Forest Service district, we want them to bring folks to us, because it's almost like a NASCAR type deal. You need a couple people to change out the batteries and stuff and see what's going on, so that I don't have to send 3 people there. I can send the drone pilot, and if folks are familiar with how to set it up, then they become the pit crew per se.
Okay. And then is there an option to fly the drone manually just to a point to drop a single or just a few spheres rather than a pre-programmed mission?
Yep, you can manually fly it. That was one of our issues we had with it, and our pilot quickly realized it and saved our drone from becoming, because something happened in the programming and it went haywire, and he was able to save it. So you can grab it and bring it back manually.
Okay. I think we've got time for one more question. What is the flight time for the drone?
Between 30 and 40 minutes.
Okay. And so you said with a larger payload, you might not even have time to drop the entire payload.
Right. It's going to, because with this system, if you put it in hover mode, because of the 3 GPS units, she will stay right there. She will fight against the wind and everything else and won't move, where other drones might be pushed off it because it's going to sit there. So it's going to depend what your wind's doing. If it's fighting a pretty good wind, it's going to take more energy out of them batteries. But
okay,
between 30 and 45 minutes is about a set of batteries life.
Okay. All righty, very good. Well, I think that's all the time we have. So there are some more questions. I'm going to paste them into a separate file, and then we'll try to answer those by email afterwards. So if your question wasn't answered, we will try to get those answered and probably post them on our website afterwards. All righty. Thank you very much, Keith. This was a wonderful presentation, and I know people are really, really interested in this technology.